This video is focused on textural percussion. What we mean by this is how we can use processing to create interesting textures from our percussion sounds. We'll also look at how the choice of percussion sound is important as well, as we aim to create an organic sounding texture. So let's have a listen to an example of textural percussion on Maya Jane Coles' track Something in the Air. Listen out for the percussion that is layered over the top of the kick, synths and hat. So as you can hear, the choice of percussion sound and use of processing creates an interesting texture and adds another element to the track. It sounds like the sounds themselves are possibly either found sounds or Foley sounds. They're certainly not your traditional hat, snare or clap sounds. They've been processed in an interesting way as well, with clever use of panning, as well as reverb and possibly even a bit of delay to add space and depth to them. Let's have a look at how we can create our own textural percussion loop. So I've got a basic idea with drums and a main synth. I'm looking to add an extra layer to it as it's a little bit thin sounding. I want to create an organic sounding percussion loop to layer on top, and for the basis of this I'll be using a found sound which I've loaded into Simpler and trimmed. So let's have a listen to this sound. As you can hear, it already has an interesting texture, so is a great starting point. Now it's about processing this to create an effective percussion loop with movement and variation. So first off, I'm going to add Live's Echo plugin. Echoes and delays are very useful tools for creating percussion loops, as with clever programming it's able to turn a single percussion hit into a rhythmic pattern. Think of the repeats that you're programming in as ghost hits. So let's dial in some repeats. Firstly, I'm going to change from dotted to straight notes. And it might be nice to have a different delay for the left and right, so I'll go for an eighth note and a quarter note. So let's experiment with the feedback and also filtering the repeats until I get a sound that I'm happy with. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Next up, I'm going to add Live's grain delay, which is great for creating unusual pitch delay effects. I'll dial down the dry wet amount and change the repeat value to 3/16. Now let's adjust the pitch and frequency values to get some interesting pitched repeats. I can tweak each slider individually or use the XY display to affect both at once. So let's use the XY control for now. And let's have a listen. So with these two delays, we've turned our initial percussion hit into this unusual loop which almost sounds a bit like water trickling, and this is definitely an interesting texture and something that I'm keen to work with further. I'd like to add more movement to the sound and can do this using Live's frequency shift. I want this to affect the whole sound, so I'll crank the dry wet up to 100%. and use the built-in LFO to create some movement. So as you can see here, I synced the rate to half a bar, which I thought worked well. Lastly, for a bit of colour, I'll add a phaser. So let's listen to this in context with the rest of the track. In particular, I really like the tail of this loop where the trickling like sound effect is most prominent. In fact, I'm going to resample the tail end and I'll have this as the main loop. To do this, I need to create a new audio track and set the input to resampling. Then I'll drag my loop into the arrange window. Now I can record arm my new audio track and record the loop onto this. Now I can trim my loop just to leave the desired tail. And then drag this into a new instance of Simpler. So let's now listen to this in context with the rest of the track. So just for some final processing, I'm going to add stereo width using Live's Delay plugin to fill the space in the track a bit better. I'll turn the dry wet up to max and the feedback down to 0. Now I need to switch the delay mode from sync to time and unlink the left and right channels. Then if I dial in one side with slightly more delay than the other, I can create stereo width. So you should be able to hear that effect now. And let's listen to this completed textural percussion loop in context with all the other elements of the track.